In January 2019, WeWork was valued at $47 billion. It was the most valuable startup in the United States. Backed by $18.5 billion from SoftBank's Vision Fund, the largest technology investment fund in history. Its co-founder, Adam Neumann, was worth over $4 billion. He told investors WeWork wasn't a real estate company, it was a technology company, a community company, a consciousness company. He said it was going to change how people work, live, and connect, and that he planned to become the world's first trillionaire. 4 years later, WeWork filed for bankruptcy. $47 billion in value, gone. $19 billion in liabilities. SoftBank lost $14 billion. And Adam Neumann, the man who burned through it all, walked away a billionaire. This is not a story about office space. It's a story about what happens when charisma replaces a business model, when investors fund the story instead of the numbers, and when no one on the board has the power or the will to say stop. WeWork started simply enough. In 2010, Adam Neumann and Miguel McKelvey opened a co-working space in a building in SoHo, Manhattan. The concept was straightforward. Lease large commercial spaces, redesign them into open-plan offices with shared amenities, and rent desks and private offices on flexible, short-term leases. The pitch was aimed at freelancers and startups who didn't want to sign 5-year leases or rent entire floors. Neumann was born in Israel. He served in the Israeli Navy, moved to New York, and tried several business ventures before starting WeWork. He didn't have a background in technology or real estate. What he had was energy, confidence, and an ability to make people believe in what he was selling. The early model worked. Occupancy rates were high, revenue grew. By 2012, WeWork had expanded to multiple locations. By 2014, JP Morgan led a $150 million investment round that pushed the valuation to $1.5 billion. By 2016, Neumann was worth over $1 billion on paper, and WeWork was one of the fastest-growing startups in the country. But from the beginning, the economics were a problem. WeWork signed long-term leases, often 10 to 15 years, and then rented out space on short-term agreements, often month to month. That meant the company owed landlords billions, regardless of whether tenants stayed. The bet was simple, that the spaces would always be full. If they weren't, the losses would be catastrophic. The real transformation of WeWork came in 2017, when Masayoshi's son, the CEO of SoftBank and the head of a $100 billion Vision Fund, met Adam Neumann. The meeting lasted 12 minutes. Son toured WeWork's headquarters, looked at Neumann, and committed $4.4 billion. It was the second largest private investment ever made in an American startup. That single investment pushed WeWork's valuation to $20 billion. Son told Neumann the problem wasn't that he was thinking too big, it was that he was thinking too small. He reportedly told Neumann that in a fight, the crazy one wins, and urged him to expand faster, spend more, and dominate the global market before anyone else could. Neumann took the advice literally. WeWork opened locations at a staggering pace, nearly one new location every single day at its peak. It expanded into China, India, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. It acquired companies in everything from event planning to artificial intelligence to a wave pool company called WaveGarden. It launched We Live, apartments with shared common areas, and We Grow, a private elementary school with tuition up to $42,000 a year. None of these ventures were profitable, but the money kept coming. By January 2019, SoftBank had poured over $18 billion into WeWork, and the valuation hit $47 billion. To put that in perspective, at that valuation, WeWork was worth more than 10 of the largest publicly traded real estate companies combined. The company that rented desks was valued higher than companies that owned the buildings. The justification was always the same. WeWork wasn't a real estate company. It was a technology platform, a data company, a lifestyle brand. The word community appeared more than 150 times in its IPO filing. The word profit barely appeared at all. As WeWork grew, so did Adam Neumann's personal extraction from the company. He bought buildings with his own money and then leased them back to WeWork, collecting rent from the company he ran. Between 2016 and 2017, WeWork paid over $12 million in rent to buildings partially owned by its own CEO. He registered the trademark We through a personal holding company, then charged WeWork $5.9 million to use the name when the company rebranded from WeWork to the We Company. He returned the money only after it became public. He cashed out over $700 million in stock before the company went public, selling shares in private transactions while the company was still burning through billions in losses. That is almost unheard of for a startup founder. He used a company-purchased $60 million Gulfstream jet for personal travel. On one flight from the U.S. to Israel, Neumann and his friends smoked marijuana so heavily that the flight crew had to put on oxygen masks. When the plane landed, a crew member found a cereal box stuffed with cannabis. Bottles of Don Julio 1942 tequila were required on every flight, even morning departures. After an all-hands meeting where he somberly told employees that 7% of the staff had been laid off, Neumann immediately had trays of tequila shots passed around and brought out a rapper to perform. At another company event on a 27-story rooftop, he sprayed investors with a fire extinguisher. He became obsessed with surfing but refused to paddle. His solution was hiring jet skis to tow him to the waves. Neumann owed WeWork $1.75 million in personal expenses at the time of his departure. The board forgave the debt. The corporate governance was designed to ensure none of this could be challenged. Neumann held shares with 20 times the voting power of regular shareholders. He could make virtually any decision without board approval. He had the right to appoint his own successor. His wife, Rebecca Neumann, a cousin of Gwyneth Paltrow, was given the authority to choose a replacement CEO if Adam became incapacitated. In August 2019, WeWork filed its S-1, the public document required before going public on the stock market. It was a disaster. The filing revealed that WeWork had lost $1.9 billion in 2018. It was on pace to lose even more in 2019. The company had $17.9 billion in long-term lease obligations and only $2.5 billion in cash. It burned through $700 million in the first 6 months of 2019 alone. But the numbers weren't what shocked Wall Street. It was the governance. The S-1 revealed Neumann's 20-to-1 voting control. It disclosed the self-dealing transactions, the leases, the trademark sale, the personal loans. It showed that Neumann had taken out personal lines of credit worth hundreds of millions, secured against his WeWork stock. The filing also featured a bizarre letter from Neumann that opened with the word "we," styled in cursive, and described the company's mission in spiritual, almost messianic terms. Financial analysts reading the document couldn't find a path to profitability. What they found instead was a company that was spending $2 for every dollar it earned, run by a founder who treated it like a personal piggy bank. The market's reaction was immediate. Analysts slashed the valuation from $47 billion to $20 billion, then to $15 billion, then to $10. Institutional investors pulled out. The IPO roadshow was a failure. On September 17, 2019, WeWork formally withdrew its IPO. Within days, Neumann was forced to step down as CEO. His severance, negotiated with SoftBank, was worth up to $1.7 billion. That included $185 million in consulting fees, a stock buyout, and the forgiveness of personal loans. The man who had destroyed $40 billion in value was paid $1 billion to leave. 2,400 employees were laid off. Locations were closed. The company that had once opened an office a day was now shutting them down. SoftBank injected another $9.5 billion in a rescue package to keep WeWork alive. WeWork finally went public in October 2021 through a SPAC merger, a backdoor to the stock market, at a valuation of $9 billion, less than a fifth of what SoftBank had paid. The stock continued to fall. By 2023, WeWork's market value had dropped to under $50 million. On November 6, 2023, WeWork filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. $19 billion in liabilities. The company that had once been valued at $47 billion was now worth less than some of the individual floors it had once leased. SoftBank's total losses on WeWork exceeded $14 billion. Masayoshi's son publicly admitted he had been foolish to invest. The Vision Fund, designed to back the next generation of transformative companies, became a cautionary tale about what happens when the largest pool of investment capital in history meets a founder with no guardrails. Adam Neumann was never criminally charged. He walked away with over $2 billion. He attempted to buy WeWork back during the bankruptcy proceedings, offering $500 million. The creditors rejected his bid. Yardi Systems acquired the majority stake instead. What makes the WeWork story different from most corporate collapses is that it wasn't fraud in the legal sense. There was no secret code draining customer accounts, no fabricated revenue. What there was, openly, visibly in the S-1 filing for anyone to read, was a company spending more than it earned, run by a CEO extracting hundreds of millions for himself, backed by investors who chose not to look at the math. SoftBank saw the losses and invested more. The board saw the self-dealing and approved it. The banks, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, prepared the IPO knowing the numbers didn't work. Everyone in the system had access to the same information, and everyone assumed that someone else would be left holding the bill. $47 billion, $18 billion in investor money, $19 billion in liabilities, and the founder who built it all walked away richer than when he started.